Yeah, 28. Good morning. It's Thursday. What would you do? You know, you always have that question, right? Or you have those conversations with your friends of, what would you do if? What would you do if? Right? I know you always think about what would you do if you found a time machine? If you just stumbled upon a time machine, or your buddy next door was like, hey, check this out, Ian. I got a time machine, man. And we could just start flying through time. What would you do? Where would you go? You know, that's a big what would you do. But it's always like, it's a funner game to play if you go, what would you do? Did I say funner? More fun? Funner. What am I, 5 years old? It's a better game to go, okay, you get one trip. So you get a round trip, right? So you get a round trip. Where would you go? And you go, okay, what year, right? So it's always a fun one to go. I'm always like, I constantly go, I want to go to the 20s. But there's just so many spots, you know, it's like, I want to go to the 20s and live that out, see how I would do. For some reason, that's where my brain goes. Now, why is that? Why is that where you'd go back? It's either, you know, or I'd like to live in the Wild West for a little bit, see how I'd do. You know, because it's like people always think that they're gonna in the afterlife. You know, like I have people in my life that feel, well, that's your you know, your afterlife was this, and or you know, you're reincarnated as another. Your soul is now in this new body here in 2022, where everybody's a bunch of pussies, and then you got to live in this era now. But you go, you know, why does my brain always take me back to that year? You know, it's probably just because it's something that's fascinating to you, you know, and you have family that lived in that era, so you kind of want to live back with your family, you know. So that would be interesting. But people always want to think that they were cool, like they were successful, they were cool, they were, even if they go back, they were warriors, they were, you know, they were something special. No one ever goes, yeah, I'm now reincarnated in this year, but back then I was a coward. No one ever thinks that. Now, of course, there had to have been some cowards. Of course there were. But for some reason, you weren't. I wasn't. You know, no one wants to think that. Like, what if you go back in time and go, no, you actually were a coward. You were the lowest form of life back then. You know, you hid while everybody was out at war. You hid while people was out getting food and water and trying to support their families and battling oncoming onslaughts. But you hid. You were that guy. You know, it's like, you ever seen A Million Ways to Die in the West? It's a Seth Rogen, you know, the guy from Family Guy makes this movie. And it's funny. It's because everybody was a tough guy in the Wild West. And he plays the one pussy. You know, and it's funny. It's a funny thought because it's true. There had to have been many pussies back then, many cowards, you know, which is almost brutal because if you weren't a coward, if you were the Wyatt Earps of that time, right? And your grandfather, your great grandfather, and now you have a kid who complains about the silliest of all sillies, you know, and you're going, oh boy, what we fought for, what we had to do so you can be out there picketing outside your college that I pay for. That's got to be brutal to some parents. I can imagine, you know, but that's going to skew me off of this little game. It's like, what would you do? What would you do if you won the lottery? Right? What would you do if you won the lottery? every time I get a lotto ticket, because my mother and I like to play the lotto, I think it bonds us. It helps us kind of look at the numbers and go, we'll get them next time. We've been doing that for, 30 years. We've been doing that since I was a little kid. She's like, we'll get it next time. But what would you do if you won the lotto? Think about it. The smart move, here's the smart move, guys. Don't tell anybody. Keep it to yourself, because you're going to start getting some family members out of the woodwork because they're going to feel that you didn't work for it. So you can just give it up. You can just give it up. Give it to your loser family members, or give it to your loser friends, or people that you didn't even know were your friends or now your friends. Telling you, don't tell shit. If you need to pay off some people's bills, just pay off their bills. Don't tell them where it came from, because it's a disaster. Now, I don't know personally, obviously, but I do know definitely when you come into a little success, people start to come out of the woodwork, start asking you for shit, for some random dollars. Hey, man, come on, you got it. You got it. Well, it's like, I got it for now because I worked hard for it. But if you win the lotto, keep your mouth shut. Put it in businesses. Make more money with that. Don't go blow it like the rest of you do. All the lotto winners, they all blow their money. I think I saw something. It was like 85% of all lotto winners will blow their money in the first few years and be broke again. Isn't that crazy? Like, how stupid do you got to be? Now, I understand, because a lot of times you don't understand money. Like, a lot of people just don't understand how money works. You gotta try to make more money, because it doesn't last. It just doesn't. Because especially with inflation like we got right now, gas prices and whatnot, food prices, everything, rent, everything goes up, especially when you got the president that we got and the administration that we got. It's going to go up, but it always has. Inflation, up and down, up and down. But sometimes it'll go up and stay up, and now you got to figure out how you're going to pay rent, and you got kids, and you got mouths to feed. So, take my advice. You win that money, keep it. Don't start blowing it yet, and keep your mouth shut about it. Keep your mouth shut about it. Like if I win big in Las Vegas, nobody knows. Nobody knows. I keep it to myself. Now, when I win big is not that big considering. Win a couple bucks. Except there was one time I came up on a good $900 and I had to take my buddy out for an all-night strip club event. And I blew all the money. But can I tell you something though? Like, those things are worth it. You got to ask if the juice is worth the squeeze, right? I'm going to take my buddy out and we're going to spend $900 worth on strippers, which goes fast. But it was worth it because it was our time to be together, me and my buddy. And it was worth it. I value those things. So make sure you do things that you value with that money. What would you do if you just found money? Now, here's a better one. I heard this. Where did I hear this? I think I was listening to another podcast or something. And I heard a lady bought a couch on Craigslist, and in the couch was 30 G's, 30 grand. And she returned that money to those people. And the people rewarded her, said, "Oh, you're such a good person for returning this money. Here's $2,000. Oh, gee, thanks. The couch probably cost that." So she got a free couch, basically. Now, I guess if you don't need the money. Now, maybe she's got cash to return that money. And also, who just leaves 30 G's in a couch and forgets about it? They must be rolling. And who puts 30 G's in a couch? I mean, that's not even a good hiding spot. I mean, you're into some shit if you're putting 30 G's in a couch, but what is the reason why it's in that couch that you're selling? I gotta know. I'd love to know, but there was no report on that. It's just returning that money. Would you return 30 G's, that's in a couch? Like, think about it. Think about why those 30 G's are in a couch. You know, you can go, maybe it's dirty money, maybe it's a setup, blah, 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 blah. I go, I don't give a fuck. I'm telling you right now, here's what I'll do. I'll keep that 30 G's until you come ask for it. If you ask for it, I'll give it back. If you're like, hey, I lost 30 G's in this couch, I'll give it back. Yeah, I think I would. And I go, that's a mistake that I think we all would make. But if you never come looking for it, I'm keeping it. I'm keeping those 30 G's. Yep. But giving it back, that's so weird. But you must be rolling in cash to give that back already. You know what I mean? They're like, look, we don't need it, and we don't know what kind of shit it comes attached to this 30 G's. You know? I mean, you could. But the way I look at money is that it doesn't last forever. There are tragedies that'll hit a family. You know, let me tell you something. This family over here has had some shit where we had to start emptying bank accounts. You know, and it all has to do with injuries, illnesses, things like that. We got to start emptying bank accounts. Insurance isn't going to pay for it. You know? So this family's had to recover a few times. So money doesn't always last. You think you're rolling and boom. You know, like a great example. You think you're rolling and my dog Baron needs something serious. Serious. Gonna cost about 10 G's. And guess what? I'll pay anything for that dog. So I start emptying shit. I start selling shit. You better believe it. Now he's better and I've recouped. We're getting better. That happens. So I wouldn't just start emptying your found money too soon. You know, but what would you do? You thought 30 G's, you give that back? I don't think so. Most of you will not. Definitely not. Not even if you got 100 mil in the bank, you're still keeping those 30 G's. That's just smart. You have to. That's life. It's like the dry cleaner, the law of the dry cleaner. Sometimes you get handed the wrong shirt, and you like the shirt, so you keep it. But, yeah, moving along, what would you do? Now, what brought me to this was that when I was living in North Hollywood, we lived kind of near the Burbank Airport. And the Burbank Airport, you can kind of hear planes go by. It wasn't that bad. But one time, there was an emergency, I think, fighter jet landing, if I remember correctly. That's what they tried to claim. But I was on the phone with my mother. And as I was on the phone, you start to hear the plane get closer and closer and closer and closer. And so close to where I had to start talking louder to my mother. And I'm going, Mom, do you hear this? Ma, do you hear this? And she's like, yeah, and it's getting so close where I go, this is going to crash. This airplane is going to crash into this neighborhood. It's so loud, and it started rattling the house where pictures were coming off the walls. I'm not lying to you. I swear to God. And my dogs start barking. It's getting that close. And look, I'm getting kind of goosebumps thinking about it because I swore that I was just having, and I'm going, Mom, you hear that? My mom was going, yeah. Then I stopped talking to my mom, but I still had the phone. I'm going, oh my God, right? And I start, and then then my dogs go running outside, and I didn't want them outside because I swear the plane is going to crash. Parts are going to go flying everywhere. The plane, I could hear the engine in the plane. It was so close. And so I bring my dogs from the porch. I drag them back on the other side of the door inside the house. And I'm going, oh my God. And I take my dogs' necks and I huddle over them. And I'm on the ground with my dog going, oh shit. Oh, 'cause I swear, you have to, if I could explain this to you, I couldn't hear my own voice. It was so loud. So I'm going, oh my God. I couldn't hear my own voice. That's how loud those plane engines were. So now it passed. It did not crash, and it made it, I guess, into Burbank. But to us, those fighter jets, and I wasn't the only one, the whole neighborhood, car alarms are going off. The whole neighborhood walks out and goes, "What the fuck was that?" And I'm standing there going, "I don't know." Like, we're all freaked out because we all in the neighborhood heard it. And so I looked it up because I was like, what the fuck was that? And what they were trying to claim, and it was an emergency landing by a fighter jet that was running what do you call it, rehearsals, and said they had to land. I don't believe it. I think a plane was going down and they caught it. So, but the point of the story is, what would you do? I now know what I would do if a plane was going to crash into my home. I'd dive onto my dogs and get ready for impact. Is what I did, And then after that plane flew on by, I picked the phone up and my mom is freaked out. I was like, "Well, what's going on?" And I go, "Mom, the fucking plane was so low over the house, it rattled the whole neighborhood." Here's what I think. Like, have you ever seen Top Gun? I haven't seen the new one, but have you ever seen Top Gun where they do a flyby and they rattle the control station? That's what that was. It did a flyby in my neighborhood. And I now know what I would do if I was faced with a plane coming into my neighborhood or about ready to crash. I know what I would do. So I dived onto my dogs. It was like, oh, shit. And my dogs knew something was up, too. That's why they ran outside and started barking. They were barking at the jet. They were barking at it. I was like, we're not going to look up. We're going to prepare for impact, son. So it's like, what would you do? No one really knows. It's like I've been through a lot of things in face of, say, death. And it's interesting. What would you do? What would you do? And, people don't really know what they would do in certain situations. Everyone thinks they would be brave. Everyone thinks they would spin kick some guy to save their wife's life. But life doesn't always work like that. They don't always work like that. And sometimes you got to be a little bit of a psychopath to act in the face of death. I got to admit, what brings in my mind, I've had a gun pulled on me. That is a fact. I have. How did I react? Well, the first time, I had a shotgun pulled on me, and after I beat up some dude's buddy, and he came back to get me, and anyways, what I did is I turned around, took off running, I was also 19, 18 or something like that. I took off running and jumped a fence, and hid in a neighbor's backyard until they left. That's what I would do if I was a kid. And then later on, as I got older, I had a gun pulled on me, handgun, and I stared at it. I go, "What, bitch?" So that's what I would do. But I'm not saying that's the right thing to do, because your boy over here doesn't, I don't really care about death that much, as long as you're not hurting my loved ones. But, I'm not saying that to try to be a tough guy or anything. I'm just saying that's how I reacted. And I was like, you ain't gonna pull that trigger because you're shaking. You're a bitch. But what would you do? It's another one of those things. What would you do? I know what I would do now. I just go, okay, God, ain't got all day, son. But, or maybe not now. Things are always different, because sometimes, like, you feel like you got no reason to live. So, and I think maybe at that time I didn't have that. I didn't give a fuck, Now maybe things are a little different. It's always different. What would you do? What would you do? But I always like the money one. What would you do if you came upon this kind of cash? What would you do if, they had the Indecent Proposal, right? That movie, Indecent Proposal, with what's her face and what's his head? You know who I'm talking about. Where he's like, "I'll give you $1 million to sleep with your wife." That would be interesting. That would be an interesting proposal. I myself would be like, "Go fuck yourself, bitch. $2 million, let's talk." But it's like, what would you do? Like, but it's hard to say unless it's really in front of you. You know, like that whole going gay for a mill. We've talked about that before. What would you do? I do love those questions because you never know until you're faced with it, even if it's positive. Even if it's positive. Like we were talking about, I was talking about with my band. Like, what if a producer was like, "Hey, I'm gonna give you 50 mil and send your kids to college or whatever, but you got to be a boy band for 2 years or something." And half of us was like, "Fuck yeah, let's do it. I don't give a fuck." The other half was like, "Hell no, couldn't live with myself. Couldn't live." I go, "Yeah, but what if that shit's in front of you? I bet you'd do it. I think we all would. Let's be honest. Especially if you got kids. It'll put your kids through a good college, pay for all your shit. I think you'd do it. Be in some sissy-ass boy band. But it depends what they had to do to be in that boy band. I heard a lot of horror stories but from some of these guys. So, I mean, for the most part, if you're having to do some gay shit and you're a straight man, I think most would probably say no. I think so. But you never know. Those are always interesting questions, man. Yeah, like I think if you guys have any other ideas on what would you do, let me know. Let's see what we can come up with. Because I'll try to give an honest answer. I'm serious. You know me. I'll try to be honest about it. All right, you guys, I'm out. Cheers.